The Path of Purification. Opening parenthesis. Visuddhimagga. By Bhadantacariya Buddhaghosa. Translated from the Pali by Bhikkhu Naoamoli. See 22H notes. The 7 noble treasures are faith, virtue, conscience, shame, learning, generosity, and understanding. There is no dissociation from consciousness. See 22F. The 4 functions described separately. Full understanding is threefold, that is, full understanding is the known, full understanding is investigating, judging, and full understanding is abandoning. Abandoning is threefold too, like full understanding, that is, abandoning by suppressing, abandoning by substitution of opposites, and abandoning by cutting off. The abandoning by substitution of opposites is the abandoning of the perception of permanence through the means of the contemplation of impermanence, of the perception of pleasure through the means of the contemplation of pain, of the perception of self through the means of the contemplation of not self, of delight through the means of the contemplation of dispassion, revulsion, of greed through the means of the contemplation of fading away, of originating through the means of the contemplation of cessation, of grasping through the means of the contemplation of relinquishment, of the perception of compactness through the means of the contemplation of destruction, of accumulation through the means of the contemplation of fall, of the perception of lastingness through the means of the contemplation of change, of the sign through the means of the contemplation of the signless, of desire through the means of the contemplation of the desireless, of misinterpreting, insisting through the means of the contemplation of voidness, of misinterpreting, insisting, due to grasping at a core, through the means of insight into states that is higher understanding, of misinterpreting, insisting, due to confusion, through the means of correct knowledge and vision, of misinterpreting, insisting, due to reliance on formations, through the means of the contemplation of danger in them, of non-reflection through the means of the contemplation of reflection, of misinterpreting, insisting, due to bondage, through means of contemplation of turning away. Excerpted YouTube. Pop_022F. Realization is knowledge in the sense of touch. 22E. The 4 path knowledges is said to exercise 4 functions in a single moment. These are full understanding, abandoning, realizing, and developing. 22C. Section 48. Herein, the fetters are the 10 states beginning with a greed for the fine material. So called because they fetter aggregates in this life to aggregates of the next, or commit to its fruit, or beings to suffering. For as long as those exist there is no cessation of the others. And of these fetters, greed for the fine material, greed for the immaterial, conceit, pride, agitation, and ignorance are called 5 higher fetters because they fetter beings to aggregates, etc. produced in higher forms of becoming, while false view of individuality, uncertainty, adherence to rules and vows, greed for sense desires, and resentment are called the 5 lower fetters because they fetter beings to aggregates, etc. produced in the lower forms of becoming. Section 49. The defilements are the 10 states, namely, greed, hate, delusion, conceit, pride, false view, uncertainty, stiffness of mind, agitation, consciencelessness, shamelessness. They are so called because they are themselves defiled and because they defile their associated states. Section 50. The wrongnesses are the 8 states. Namely, wrong view, wrong thinking, wrong speech, wrong action, wrong livelihood, wrong effort, wrong mindfulness, wrong concentration, which with wrong knowledge and wrong deliverance come to 10. They are so called because they occur wrongly. Note 14. Wrong knowledge, which is wrong because it does not occur rightly, i.e., in conformity with the truth, and is wrong and mistaken owing to misinterpretations, etc., is just delusion. Wrong deliverance is the wrong notion of liberation that assumes liberation to take place in a world apex. Section 51. The worldly states are the 8, namely, gain, lust, fame, disgrace, pleasure, pain, blame, and praise. They are so called because they continually succeed each other as long as the world persists. But when the worldly states are included, then by the metaphorical use of the cause's name for its fruit, the approval that has the gain, etc., as its object and the resentment that has the loss, etc., as its object should also be understood as included. Section 52. The kinds of avarice are the 5. Namely, avarice about dwellings, families, gain, dhamma, and praise, which occur as inability to bear sharing with others any of these things beginning with dwellings. Section 53. The perversions are the 3. Namely, perversions of perception, of consciousness, and of view, which occur apprehending objects that are impermanent, painful, not self, and foul, ugly, as permanent, pleasant, self, and beautiful. Section 54. The ties are the 4 beginning with covetousness, so called because they tie the mental body and the material body. They are described as the bodily tie of covetousness, the bodily tie of ill will, the bodily tie of adherence to rules and vows, and the bodily tie of insisting, misinterpreting, that this only is the truth. Section 55. Bad ways is a term for doing what ought not to be done and not doing what ought to be done, out of zeal, desire, hate, delusion, and fear. They are called bad ways because they are ways not to be traveled by noble ones. Section 56. Cankers, asava. As far as a. Change of lineage in the case of states of consciousness, and as far as a. The acme of becoming in the case of the kinds of becoming, that is to say, the 4th immaterial state, there are exudations, savana, owing to the formed nature of the object. This is a term for greed for sense desires, greed for becoming, wrong view, and ignorance, because of the exuding savana of these defilements from unguarded sense doors, like water from cracks in a pot in the sense of constant trickling, or because of their producing savana, the suffering of the round of rebirths. Section 57. The hindrances are the 5. Namely, lust, ill will, stiffness and torpor, agitation and worry, and uncertainty, in the sense of obstructing and hindering and concealing reality from consciousness, IV. Section 60. The inherent tendencies are the 7, namely, greed for sense desires, etc. In the sense of the inveterateness, stated thus: the inherent tendency to greed for sense desires, the inherent tendency to resentment, conceit, pride, false view, uncertainty, greed for becoming, and ignorance. For it is owing to their inveteracy that they are called inherent tendencies, anasayat, since they inhere, anasanti, as cause for the arising of greed for sense desires, etc. Again and again. Denigration, snubbing, indirect talk, hinting, fondling, ingratiating chatter, suggesting, persuading, grimacing, facial contraction, shummery, hypocrisy. Herein, what is belittling? Abusing of others, disparaging, reproaching, snubbing, continual snubbing, ridicule, continual ridicule, denigration, continual denigration, tale-bearing, backbiting, on the part of one bent on gain, honor and renown, of one of evil wishes, a prey to wishes, this is called belittling. Section 62. Herein, what is talking? Talking at others. Talking. Talking round. Talking up. Continual talking up. Persuading. Continual persuading. Suggesting. Continual suggesting, ingratiating chatter, flattery, being supery, fondling, on the part of one bent on gain, honor and renown, of one of evil wishes, a prey to wishes, this is called talking. See 22b. Section 33. 1. Herein, the fulfillment of states sharing in enlightenment is the fulfilledness of those states partaking in enlightenment. For they are the following 37 states. The 4 foundations of mindfulness, the 4 right endeavors, the 4 roads to power, the 5 faculties, the 5 powers, the 7 enlightenment factors, and the Noble Eightfold Path. And they are called partaking of enlightenment because they take the part of the Noble Eightfold Path, which is called enlightenment in the sense of enlightening, and they take the part of that because they are helpful. Zeal, consciousness, happiness, tranquility, equanimity, thinking, speech, action, and livelihood. Mindfulness, investigation of states, energy, happiness, tranquility, concentration, and equanimity, as factors in a being who is becoming enlightened. Section 9a. No higher rule, the Buddhas say, than patience. And no nibbana higher than forbearance. Section 21c. 3. But we try. Section 32. But does the knowledge of appearances terror itself fear, or does it not fear? It does not fear. For it is simply the mere judgment that past formations have ceased, present ones are ceasing, and future ones will cease. Just as a man with eyes looking at 3 charcoal pits at a city gate is not himself afraid, since he only forms the mere judgment that all who fall into them will suffer no little pain. Or just as when a man with eyes looks at 3 spikes set in a row, an acacia spike, an iron spike, and a gold spike, he is not himself afraid, since he only forms the mere judgment that all who fall on these spikes will suffer no little pain. So too the knowledge of appearances terror does not itself fear. It only forms the mere judgment that in the 3 kinds of becoming, which resemble the 3 charcoal pits and the 3 spikes, past formations have ceased, present ones are ceasing, and future ones will cease. Section 33. But it is called appearances terror only because formations in all kinds of becoming, generation, destiny, station, or abode are fearful in being bound for destruction, and so they appear only as a terror. Here is the text about its appearance to him as terror. When he brings to mind as impermanent what appears to him as terror. When he brings to mind as painful what appears to him as terror. When he brings to mind as not self what appears to him as terror. When he brings to mind as impermanent the sign appears to him as terror. When he brings to mind as painful, occurrence appears to him as terror. When he brings to mind as not self, the sign and occurrence appear to him as terror. Knowledge of danger. Section 35. As he repeats, develops and cultivates the knowledge of appearance as terror, he finds no asylum, no shelter, no place to go to, no refuge in any kind of becoming, generation, destiny, station, or abode. In all the kinds of becoming, generation, destiny, station, and abode there is not a single formation that he can place his hopes in or hold on to. The 3 kinds of becoming appear like charcoal pits full of glowing coals. The 4 primary elements like hideous, venomous snakes. S4174. The 5 aggregates like murderers with raised weapons. S4174. The 6 internal bases like an empty village. The 6 external bases like village raiding robbers. S417475. The 7 stations of consciousness and the 9 abodes of beings as though burning, blazing and glowing with the 11 fires. CS419, and all formations appear as a huge mess of dangers destitute of satisfaction or substance, like a tumor, a disease, a dart, a calamity, an affliction. CMI 436. How? Section 36. They appear as a forest thicket of seemingly pleasant aspect but infested with wild beasts. A cave full of tigers. Water haunted by monsters and ogres. An enemy with raised sword, poisoned food, a road beset by robbers, a burning coal, a battlefield between contending armies appear to a timid man who wants to live in peace. And just as that man is frightened and horrified and his hair stands up when he comes upon a thicket infested by wild beasts, etc., and he sees it as nothing but danger, so too when all formations have appeared as a terror by contemplation of dissolution, this meditator sees them as utterly destitute of any core or any satisfaction and as nothing but danger. The 3 kinds of becoming. Lowly, sense realm. Middling, form realm. Subtle, formless realm. The different forms of becoming, or sensual, material, and immaterial becoming. The 4 kinds of generation. Egg-born generation, womb-born generation, moisture-born generation, and spontaneous generation. From the 3 kinds of becoming, the 4 kinds of generation, the 5 kinds of destiny, the 7 stations of consciousness, and the 9 abodes of beings. The 5 aggregates or heaps are form, or material image, impression, rupa. Sensations, or feelings, received from form, vedana. Perceptions, samshna. Mental activity or formations, sankhara. And consciousness, vijnana. Skandhas, Sanskrit, or Khandhas, Pali, means heaps, aggregates, collections, groupings. In Buddhism, it refers to the 5 aggregates of clinging, Panyukipadanikanda, the 5 material and mental factors that take part in the rise of craving on clinging. They are also explained as the 5 factors that constitute and explain a sentient being's person and personality, but this is a later interpretation in response to Sarvastivada and essentialism. They see themselves purified from all these bad, unskillful qualities. Seeing this, joy springs up. Being joyful, rapture springs up. When the mind is full of rapture, the body becomes tranquil. When the body is tranquil, they feel bliss. And when blissful, the mind becomes immersed in samadhi. C9. It works for me, may it works for you. Review the danger in hate and the advantage in patience. When a man hates, is a prey to hate, and his mind is obsessed by hate, he kills living things, and no higher rule, the Buddhas say, than patience, and no nibbana higher than forbearance. First of all, it should be developed only towards oneself, doing it repeatedly thus. May I be happy and free from suffering, or may I keep myself free from enmity, affliction and anxiety and live happily. Single quote. Who loves himself will never harm another. To repay angry men in kind is worse than to be angry first. Repay not angry men in kind and win a battle hard to win. The weal of both he does promote, his own and then the others too. Who shall another's anger know and mindfully maintain his peace? For one person may be controlled in his bodily behavior with his control in doing an extensive course of duty known to all, though his verbal and mental behavior are not controlled. Then the latter should be ignored and the control in his bodily behavior remembered. But there may be another in whom not even one of these 3 things is controlled. Then compassion for that person should be aroused thus. Though he is going about in the human world now, nevertheless after a certain number of days he will find himself in one of the 8 great hells or the 16 prominent hells. Suppose an enemy has hurt you now in what is his domain, why try yourself as well to hurt? When a fool hates a man that has no hate, is purified and free from every blemish, such evil he will find comes back on him, as does fine dust thrown up against the wind. When you are angry with him, what is it you are angry with? Is it head hairs you are angry with? Or body hairs? Or nails? Or is it urine you are angry with? Or alternatively, is it the earth element in the head hairs, etc. you are angry with? Or the water element? Or the fire element? Or is it the air element you are angry with? Or among the 5 aggregates or the 12 bases or the 18 elements with respect to which this venerable one is called by such and such a name? Which then, is it the materiality aggregate you are angry with? Or the feeling aggregate, the perception aggregate, the formations aggregate, the consciousness aggregate you are angry with? C8_216 to 236. Section 233. L. Liberating the manner of consciousness. He both breathes in and breathes out, liberating the mind from the hindrances by means of the first jhana, from applied and sustained thought by means of the second, from happiness by means of the third, from pleasure and pain by means of the fourth. Or alternatively, when, having entered upon those jhanas and emerged from them, he comprehends with insight the consciousness associated with the jhana as liable to destruction and to fall. Then at the actual time of insight he liberates the mind from the perception of permanence by means of the contemplation of impermanence, from the perception of pleasure by means of the contemplation of pain, from the perception of self by means of the contemplation of not self, from delight by means of the contemplation of dispassion, from greed by means of the contemplation of fading away, from arousing by means of the contemplation of cessation, from grasping by means of the contemplation of relinquishment. Hence it is said, he trains thus, I shall breathe in, shall breathe out, liberating the manner of consciousness. So this tetrad should be understood to deal with contemplation of mind. TTD_C8_44. Head hairs, body hairs, nails, teeth, skin, flesh, sinews, bones, bone marrow, kidney, heart, liver, midriff, spleen, lungs, bowels, entrails, gorge, dung, bile, phlegm, pus, blood, sweat, fat, tears, grease, spittle, snot, oil of the joints, and urine, the brain. Pop_007B_ Bhikkhu Naoamoli 21 Sep 2020. Section 35. D. And he enunciates Gadati, rightly, Sama. He speaks only fitting speech in the fitting place, thus he is sublime also because of enunciating rightly. Here is a sutta that confirms this. Such speech as the perfect one knows to be untrue and incorrect, conducive to harm, and displeasing and unwelcome to others, that he does not speak. And such speech as the perfect one knows to be true and correct but conducive to harm, and displeasing and unwelcome to others, that he does not speak. And such speech as the perfect one knows to be true and correct, conducive to good, but displeasing and unwelcome to others, that speech the perfect one knows the time to expound. Such speech as the perfect one knows to be untrue and incorrect, and conducive to harm, but pleasing and welcome to others, that he does not speak. And such speech as the perfect one knows to be true and correct, but conducive to harm, though pleasing and welcome to others, that he does not speak. And such speech as the perfect one knows to be true and correct, conducive to good, and pleasing and welcome to others, that speech the perfect one knows the time to expound. MI 395. Thus he is sublime also because of enunciating rightly. TTD_004B. Section 88. So far the factors abandoned by the jhana have been shown. And now, in order to show the factors associated with it which is accompanied by applied and sustained thought is said. Herein, applied thinking, vitakana, is applied thought, vitaka. Hitting upon, is what is meant. It has the characteristic of directing the mind onto an object, mounting the mind on its object. Its function is to strike at and thresh, for the meditator is said, in virtue of it, to have the object struck at by applied thought, threshed by applied thought. It is manifested as the leading of the mind onto an object. Sustained thinking, vikara, is sustained thought, vikara. Continued sustainment, anasankara, is what is meant. It has the characteristic of continued pressure on, occupation with the object. Its function is to keep konas and mental states occupied with that. It is manifested as keeping consciousness anchored on that object. Section 89. And, though sometimes not separate, applied thought is the first impact of the mind in the sense that it is both a gross and inceptive, like the striking of a bell. Sustained thought is the act of keeping the mind anchored, in the sense that it is subtle with the individual essence of continued pressure, like the ringing of the bell. Applied thought intervenes, being the interference of consciousness at the time of first arousing thought. Like a bird spreading out its wings when about to soar into the air, and like a beast diving towards a lotus when it is minded to follow up the scent of it. The behavior of sustained thought is quiet, being the near non-interference of consciousness, like the birds planing with outspread wings after soaring into the air, and like the bees buzzing above the lotus after it has dived towards it. Section 90. In the commentary to the Book of Twos this is said. Applied thought occurs as a state of directing the mind onto an object, like the movement of a large bird taking off into the air by engaging the air with both wings and forcing them downwards. For it causes absorption by being unified. Sustained thought occurs with the individual essence of continued pressure, like the bird's movement when it is activating its wings for the purpose of keeping hold on the air. For it keeps pressing the object. That fits in with the latter's occurrence as anchoring. This difference of theirs becomes evident in the first and second jhanas in the fivefold reckoning. Section 91. Furthermore, applied thought is like the hand that grips firmly and sustained thought is like the hand that rubs. When one grips a tarnished metal dish firmly with one hand and rubs it with powder and oil and a woolen pad with the other hand. Likewise, when a potter has spun his wheel with a stroke on the stick and is making a dish, his supporting hand is like applied thought and his hand that moves back and forth is like sustained thought. Likewise, when one is drawing a circle, the pin that stays fixed down in the center is like applied thought which directs onto the object, and a pin that revolves round it is like sustained thought which continuously presses. Section 49. Strong mindfulness, however, is needed in all instances. For mindfulness protects the mind from lapsing into agitation through faith, energy and understanding, which favor agitation, and from lapsing into idleness through concentration, which favors idleness. So it is as desirable in all instances as a seasoning of salt in all sauces, as a prime minister in all the king's business. Hence it is said in the commentaries DA 788, MAI 292, etc. And mindfulness has been called universal by the Blessed One. For what reason? Because the mind has mindfulness as its refuge, and mindfulness is manifested as protection, and there is no exertion and restraint of the mind without mindfulness. Single quote. Section 54. There are, besides, 7 things that lead to the arising of the investigation of state's enlightenment factor. A. Asking questions. B. Making the basis clean. C. Balancing the faculties. D. Avoidance of persons without understanding. E. Cultivation of persons with understanding. F. Reviewing the field for the exercise of profound knowledge. G. Resoluteness upon that investigation of states. Section 55. 11 things lead to the arising of the energy enlightenment factor. A. Reviewing the fearfulness of the states of loss such as the hell realms, etc. B. Seeing benefit in obtaining the mundane and supramundane distinctions dependent on energy. C. Reviewing the course of the journey to be traveled, thus the path taken by the Buddhas, Pacceka Buddhas, and the great disciples has to be taken by me. And it cannot be taken by an idler. D. Being a credit to the alms food by producing great fruit for the givers. E. Reviewing the greatness of the Master, thus my Master praises the energetic, and this unsurpassable dispensation that is so helpful to us is honored in the practice, not otherwise. F. Reviewing the greatness of the heritage, thus it is the great heritage called the good Dhamma that is to be acquired by me. And it cannot be acquired by an idler. G. Removing stiffness and torpor by attention to perception of light, change of postures, frequenting the open air, etc. H. Avoidance of idle persons. A. Cultivation of energetic persons. J. Reviewing the right endeavors. K. Resoluteness upon that energy. Section 56. 11 things lead to the arising of the happiness enlightenment factor. The recollections. A. Of the Buddhas. B. Of the Dhamma. C. Of the Sangha. D. Of virtue. E. Of generosity. And F. Of deities. G. The recollection of peace. H. Avoidance of rough persons. A. Cultivation of refined persons. J. Reviewing encouraging discourses. K. Resoluteness upon that happiness. So by arousing these things in these ways he develops the investigation of state's enlightenment factor, and the others. This is how he exerts the mind on an occasion when it should be exerted. Section 57. 5. How does he restrain the mind on an occasion when it should be restrained? When his mind is agitated through over-energeticness, etc. Then, instead of developing the 3 enlightenment factors beginning with investigation of states, he should develop those beginning with tranquility. For this is said by the Blessed One. Bhikkhus, suppose a man wanted to extinguish a great mass of fire, and he put rye grass on it, and did not scatter dust on it, would that man be able to extinguish that great mass of fire? No, venerable sir. Single quote, comma. So too, bhikkhus, when the mind is agitated, that is not the time to develop the investigation of state's enlightenment factor, the energy enlightenment factor, or the happiness enlightenment factor. Why is that? Because an agitated mind cannot well be quieted by those states. When the mind is agitated, that is the time to develop the tranquility enlightenment factor, the concentration enlightenment factor, and the equanimity enlightenment factor. Why is that? Because an agitated mind can well be quieted by those states. Single quote. Bhikkhus, suppose a man wanted to extinguish a great mass of fire, and he put wet grass on it, and scattered dust on it, would that man be able to extinguish that great mass of fire? Yes, venerable sir. S. 5114. Section 60. There are, besides, 7 things that lead to the arising of the tranquility enlightenment factor. Comma. A. Using superior food. Comma. B. Living in a good climate. C. Maintaining a pleasant posture. D. Keeping to the middle. E. Avoidance of violent persons. F. Cultivation of persons tranquil in body. G. Resoluteness upon that tranquility. Section 61. 11 things lead to the arising of the concentration enlightenment factor. A. Making the basis clean, comma. B. Skill in the sign, comma. C. Balancing the faculties, comma. D. Restraining the mind on occasion, comma. E. Exerting the mind on occasion, comma. F. Encouraging the listless mind by means of faith and a sense of urgency, comma. G. Looking on with equanimity at what is occurring rightly. H. Avoidance of unconcentrated persons, a cultivation of concentrated persons. J. Reviewing of the jhanas and liberations. K. Resoluteness upon that concentration. Section 62. 5 things lead to the arising of the equanimity enlightenment factor. A. Maintenance of neutrality towards living beings. B. Maintenance of neutrality towards formations, inanimate things. C. Avoidance of persons who show favoritism towards beings and formations. D. Cultivation of persons who maintain neutrality towards beings and formations. E. Resoluteness upon that equanimity. So by arousing these things in these ways he develops the tranquility enlightenment factor, as well as the others. This is how he restrains the mind on an occasion when it should be restrained. Section 63. 6. How does he encourage the mind on an occasion when it should be encouraged? When his mind is listless owing to sluggishness in the exercise of understanding or to failure to attain the bliss of peace, then he should stimulate it by reviewing the 8 grounds for a sense of urgency. These are the 4, namely, birth, aging, sickness, and death, with the suffering of the states of loss as the 5th, and also the suffering in the past rooted in the round of rebirths, the suffering in the future rooted in the round of rebirths, and the suffering in the present rooted in the search for nutriment. And he creates confidence by recollecting the special qualities of the Buddhas, the Dhamma, and the Sangha. This is how he encourages the mind on an occasion when it should be encouraged. Section 64. 7. How does he look on at the mind with equanimity on an occasion when it should be looked on at with equanimity? When he is practicing in this way and his mind follows the road of serenity, occurs evenly on the object, and is unidle, unagitated, and not listless, then he is not interested to exert or restrain or encourage it. He is like a charioteer when the horses are progressing evenly. This is how he looks on at the mind with equanimity on an occasion when it should be looked on at with equanimity. Section 95. By the kind of states occurring. In one of greedy temperament there is frequent occurrence of such states as deceit, fraud, pride, evilness of wishes, greatness of wishes, discontent, foppery, and personal vanity. In one of hating temperament there is frequent occurrence of such states as anger, enmity, disparaging, domineering, envy, and avarice. In one of deluded temperament there is frequent occurrence of such states as stiffness, torpor, agitation, worry, uncertainty, and holding on tenaciously with refusal to relinquish. In one of faithful temperament there is frequent occurrence of such states as free generosity, desire to see noble ones, desire to hear the good Dhamma, great gladness, ingenuousness, honesty, and trust in things that inspire trust. In one of intelligent temperament there is frequent occurrence of such states as readiness to be spoken to, possession of good friends, knowledge of the right amount in eating, mindfulness and full awareness, devotion to wakefulness, a sense of urgency about things that should inspire a sense of urgency, and wisely directed endeavor. In one of speculative temperament there is frequent occurrence of such states as talkativeness, sociability, boredom with devotion to the profitable, failure to finish undertakings, smoking by night and flaming by day, CMI 144. That is to say, hatching plans at night and putting them into effect by day, and mental running hither and thither, CU 37. This is how the temperaments may be recognized by the kind of states occurring. Section 96. However, these directions for recognizing the temperaments have not been handed down in their entirety in either the texts or the commentaries. They are only expressed according to the opinion of the teachers and cannot therefore be treated as authentic. For even those of hating temperament can exhibit postures, etc., ascribed to the greedy temperament when they try diligently, and postures, etc., never arise with distinct characteristics in a person of mixed temperament. Only such directions for recognizing temperament as are given in the commentaries should be treated as authentic. For this is said, a teacher who has acquired penetration of minds will know the temperament and will explain a meditation subject accordingly. One who has not should question the pupil. So it is by penetration of minds or by questioning the person that it can be known whether he is one of greedy temperament or one of those beginning with hating temperament. Section 103. However, the meditation subject that is suitable to the temperament has not been cleared up in all its aspects yet. This will become clear automatically when those in the following list are treated in detail. Now, it was said above, and he should apprehend from among the 40 meditation subjects one that suits his own temperament. Here the exposition of the meditation subject should be first understood in these 10 ways. As to enumeration, as to which bring only access and which absorption. As to the kinds of jhana, as to surmounting, as to extension and non-extension, as to object, as to plane, as to apprehending, as to condition, as to suitability to temperament. Section 104. 1. Herein, as to enumeration. It was said above, from among the 40 meditation subjects. Herein, the 40 meditation subjects are these: 10 KCOAs totalities, 10 kinds of foulness, 10 recollections, 4 divine abidings, 4 immaterial states, 1 perception, 1 defining. Section 105. Herein, the 10 KCOAs are these: earth KCOA, water KCOA, fire KCOA, air KCOA, blue KCOA, yellow KCOA, red KCOA, white KCOA, light KCOA, and limited space KCOA. The 10 kinds of foulness are these: the bloated, the livid, the festering, the cut up, the gnawed, the scattered, the hacked and scattered, the bleeding, the worm-infested, and a skeleton. The 10 kinds of recollection are these: recollection of the Buddha, the enlightened one, karma, recollection of the Dhamma, the law, karma, recollection of the Sangha, the community, karma, recollection of virtue, recollection of generosity, recollection of deities, recollection, or mindfulness, of death, mindfulness occupied with the body, mindfulness of breathing, and recollection of peace. The 4 divine abidings are these: loving kindness, compassion, gladness, and equanimity. The 4 immaterial states are these: the base consisting of boundless space, the base consisting of boundless consciousness, the base consisting of nothingness, and the base consisting of neither perception nor non-perception. The 1 perception is the perception of repulsiveness and nutriment. The 1 defining is the defining of the 4 elements. This is how the exposition should be understood, as to enumeration. Quote. Section 106. 2 as to which bring access only and which absorption. The 8 recollections. Accepting mindfulness occupied with the body and mindfulness of breathing. The perception of repulsiveness and nutriment and the defining of the 4 elements are 10 meditation subjects that bring access only. The others bring absorption. This is as to which bring access only and which absorption. Quote. Section 107. 3. As to the kind of jhana. Among those that bring absorption, the 10 KCOAs together with mindfulness of breathing bring all 4 jhanas. The 10 kinds of foulness together with mindfulness occupied with the body bring the first jhana. The first 3 divine abidings bring 3 jhanas. The 4th divine abiding and the 4 immaterial states bring the 4th jhana. This is as to the kind of jhana. Quote. Section 121. 10. As to suitability to temperament. Here the exposition should be understood according to what is suitable to the temperaments. That is to say, first, the 10 kinds of foulness and mindfulness occupied with the body are 11 meditation subjects suitable for one of greedy temperament. The 4 divine abidings and 4 color KCOs are 8 suitable for one of hating temperament. Mindfulness of breathing is the one recollection as a meditation subject suitable for one of deluded temperament and for one of speculative temperament. The first 6 recollections are suitable for one of faithful temperament. Mindfulness of death, the recollection of peace, the defining of the 4 elements, and the perception of repulsiveness and nutriment are 4 suitable for one of intelligence temperament. The remaining KCOs and the immaterial states are suitable for all kinds of temperament. And any one of the KCOs should be limited for one of speculative temperament and measureless for one of deluded temperament. This is how the exposition should be understood here, as to suitability to temperament. Quote, Section 128. With a sincere inclination of the heart and sincere resolution. The meditator's inclination should be sincere in the 6 modes beginning with non-greed. For it is one of such sincere inclination who arrives at one of the 3 kinds of enlightenment, according as it is said. 6 kinds of inclination lead to the maturing of the enlightenment of the bodhisattvas. With the inclination to non-greed, bodhisattvas see the fault in greed. With the inclination to non-hate, bodhisattvas see the fault in hate. With the inclination to non-delusion, bodhisattvas see the fault in delusion. With the inclination to renunciation, bodhisattvas see the fault in house life. With the inclination to seclusion, bodhisattvas see the fault in society. With the inclination to relinquishment, bodhisattvas see the fault in all kinds of becoming and destiny, source untraced. For stream enterers, once returners, non-returners, those with cankers destroyed, i.e. arahants, Pacceka Buddhas, and fully enlightened ones, whether past, future or present, all arrive at the distinction peculiar to each by means of these same 6 modes. That is why he should have sincerity of inclination in these 6 modes. Section 132. Apprehend the sign means that he must connect each aspect thus. This is the preceding clause, this is the subsequent clause, this is its meaning, this is its intention, this is the simile. When he listens attentively, apprehending the sign in this way, his meditation subject is well apprehended. Then, and because of that, he successfully attains distinction, but not otherwise. This clarifies the meaning of the words, and he must apprehend. Quote, TTD_003b. Section 74. Now, as to the words, one that suits his temperament. There are 6 kinds of temperament, that is, greedy temperament, hating temperament, deluded temperament, faithful temperament, intelligence temperament, and speculative temperament. Some would have 14. Taking these 6 single ones together with the 4 made up of the 3 double combinations and 1 triple combination with the greed triad and likewise with the faith triad. But if this classification is admitted, there are many more kinds of temperament possible by combining greed, etc. with faith, etc. Therefore the kinds of temperament should be understood briefly as only 6. As to meaning, the temperaments are 1, that is to say personal nature, idiosyncrasy. According to these there are only 6 types of persons. That is, 1 of greedy temperament, 1 of hating temperament, 1 of deluded temperament, 1 of faithful temperament, 1 of intelligence temperament, and 1 of speculative temperament. Section 75. Herein, 1 of faithful temperament is parallel to 1 of greedy temperament because faith is strong when profitable, occurs in 1 of greedy temperament, owing to its special qualities being near to those of greed. For, in an unprofitable way, greed is affectionate and not over austere, and so, in a profitable way, is faith. Greed seeks out sense desires as object, while faith seeks out the special qualities of virtue and so on. And greed does not give up what is harmful, while faith does not give up what is beneficial. Section 76. 1 of intelligent temperament is parallel to 1 of hating temperament because understanding is strong when profitable, occurs in 1 of hating temperament, owing to its special qualities being near to those of hate. For, in an unprofitable way, hate is disaffected and does not hold to its object, and so, in a profitable way, is understanding. Hate seeks out only unreal faults, while understanding seeks out only real faults. And hate occurs in the mode of condemning living beings, while understanding occurs in the mode of condemning formations. Section 77. One of speculative temperament is parallel to one of deluded temperament because obstructive applied thoughts arise often in one of deluded temperament who is striving to arouse and profitable states, owing to their special qualities being near to those of delusion. For just as delusion is restless owing to perplexity, so are applied thoughts that are due to thinking over various aspects. And just as delusion vacillates owing to superficiality, so do applied thoughts that are due to facile conjecturing.